Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be working on building some elevated cedar garden beds. If you're interested in building some of these yourselves, just follow along in the video to see how I do this, or if a build plan would be helpful, I've created some with instructions on how to assemble this, as well as cut lists and material and tools needed for this project. So go check those out on my Etsy page if you're interested. I'll leave the link right here on the screen, as well as in the description below this video. Now let's get started with this project. First, I'll go through my cut list and cut all the 2x4s down to size, all of the cedar fence boards that I'm working with here, and then the 4x4s that I'm going to be using for the legs. I'm going to be putting together 3 of these garden beds today, so this is going to look like a lot of wood that I've got stacked up in line ready to start assembling this, but that's why there's going to be 3 in total. Once all the cutting is done, I'm going to move on to assembling. I'm going to start by the long sides, putting those together first, taking 2 of the long 2x4s and placing them in between the 4x4 legs. I'll toenail some deck screws in to hold those in place. Then I'll take a 2x2 and mount that on the lower 2x4 here. This is going to be the support to hold up the base of the garden bed. And this needs to be pretty solid. It's going to have a lot of weight and soil and water on it. So I'm putting quite a few screws in there to hold it. And then I'll attach the short sides. I'll use deck screws again to toenail those 2x4s to the 4x4 legs. Then I'll add a short 2x2 as a support for the base. This one's not nearly as necessary because the boards for the base are actually going to be running parallel with this, so it's only going to support the end one. Those longer 2x2s will actually be supporting most of the weight and are more important. Now, at this point, I realized I made a mistake and wasn't following my own build plans. These 2x4s were actually supposed to be mounted on the center of those 4x4s. So I just backed out those screws, moved the 2x4 to the center of the 4x4 and put it back in place. Now the base boards actually were the right length, so if you follow the build plans, you won't run into this problem. I just wasn't paying attention. Now for the base of the garden bed, we're going to be using these cedar fence boards, which are a lot more economical than the 2x4s and 4x4s. So we're going to be placing these down and fastening them into place with some shorter deck screws, and then we'll move on to attaching the side panels of the garden bed. And then we're going to be using the same short deck screws to fasten the sides into place as well. And while you're doing this, it's helpful to have a handsaw, something that you can just trim these pickets, because the end one will need to be trimmed and the base needed to be notched for those 4x4 legs so it will fit perfectly into place. There should be enough gaps in these boards to allow drainage, but if you're in an area that gets a lot of rain, you may want to drill a few drainage holes in the base just so that the water can escape and doesn't end up getting really soggy and hold in all that moisture. Once the sides are finished, I'm going to move on to dressing this up a little bit more by adding a frame around the top of this garden bed with some cedar 2x4s, and then we'll be fastening this down with 2.5-inch deck screws. Then the garden bed's pretty much done. Now I chose cedar because it's a natural, longer lasting wood without having to use pressure treated. You could do this with pressure treated and it would cut down the price maybe in half and probably last just about as long as the cedar option. But if you want to go for a more economical route, I have an option that you can build this garden bed using pressure treated and metal roofing to insulate the soil from the pressure treated. I have some build plans for that, as well as a video. You can go check that out right here. I'll leave the link on the screen. So there's a few options if you're interested. Now that we have all 3 of the garden beds built, we're going to put them in place and then start leveling them. We want to make sure that they're on nice stable ground. Then we're going to come through with some landscape fabric and put that underneath the garden beds, and then set these garden beds actually on top of some bricks. We don't want them to have direct contact with the soil, and even though we're using cedar and it should last a lot longer, anytime wood is in contact with soil, it rots out a lot quicker and bugs and termites will get in it. So just keeping them up off of the ground on some bricks will help the legs last a lot longer. The landscape fabric is going to be really nice. We're going to put some mulch down, but that will keep the weeds from growing up. We're also putting in some landscape staples just to hold down that fabric until we get the mulch in here, because it's a little windy. It's trying to blow away. And inside each of these garden beds, we're going to be putting some landscape fabric and stapling it into place. This will hold in the soil so it doesn't drain out through the cracks over time, and also help keep the soil from coming in direct contact of the wood and rotting it out quicker. Then we're going to fill these garden beds up with some nice garden soil, and one of my favorite things about these beds is the fact that you don't need that much soil to fill them up. They don't go all the way down to the ground, and so you have much less soil that you need to fill up, and the garden bed is right at the perfect height where you don't have to bend over at all. You can easily weed, plant, and work on the garden without having to bend over at all. And this really is a great setup for smaller flowers, root vegetables, different things that don't grow that tall, because it's already at the right height to reach and grab things off of. If it grows any taller, like tomatoes or okra, different plants that will just get out of reach and be too tall for these garden beds. All of those are going to be down in our field along the ground where we can easily access the plant and the veggies that we're going to be pulling off of them. My girls are going to help me mulch this real quick, throw some black mulch underneath these garden beds. It looks really nice. I don't have to worry about weed whacking underneath these and keeping it clear. Then I'm going to top off these garden beds with some black cow fertilizer before planting our seeds. In these garden beds today, we're going to be planting some carrots in the top bed, some radishes, and then some beets as well. But if you're interested in getting an update on how the growing season went, or in a few years wanting to see how the garden beds are holding up, just reach out through the comments. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll try to get back to you and maybe do an update video to show you how things are going. Alright guys, that just about finishes up the video for today. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, hit that like button down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And again, if you're interested in some build plans, I have some available for you. You can follow the link right here on the screen or down in the description to my Etsy page. I have some build plans available if you're interested. Thanks so much for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.